Ethan Vargas dies on his first day in another world when a bone dragon incinerates him. Instead of disappearing, he awakens enslaved inside a decaying level 1 skeleton body. His status panel grants bone shift and appraisal, letting him steal skilled limbs from other undead. One successful ambush replaces his rotting arm, repairs several cracks, and permanently strengthens his fragile body. The canyon contains countless skeletons, each carrying abilities that Ethan can harvest in secret. However, the bone dragon Vargas controls them all, and Ethan has only 1 year before crumbling away. To survive, he must quietly grow stronger while pretending to possess no intelligence whatsoever. His first stolen skill proves that this prison can become his greatest treasure vault. Glowing words remain suspended before Ethan as consciousness returns within the dragon's cavern. His panel identifies him as a low-rank skeleton with miserable physical statistics and 8 spirit points. Worse, 2 conditions threaten him simultaneously: Vargas's enslavement and the relentless spread of bone decay. Ethan raises one hand and finds cracked yellow bones where living flesh should exist. Panic surges through him, yet the mindless skeletons nearby ignore his silent horror completely. He soon recognizes the single advantage separating him from every other undead prisoner around him. Ethan still possesses his human memories, rational thought, and the game-like interface from his arrival. That intelligence gives him a chance, but escaping Vargas requires experience levels and evolution. He uses appraisal on a nearby level 3 skeleton possessing the defensive skill Hardbone. Fighting it directly would be suicide, so Ethan follows quietly and waits for deep sleep. Once the target lies motionless, he checks the cavern and lifts a heavy stone. The first strike cracks its skull while the second crushes the blue soul flame inside. Ethan freezes after the echo, terrified that Vargas might notice one servant killing another. Nothing moves in the darkness, and the distant bone dragon gives no sign of awareness. Relieved, Ethan removes the victim's right arm and attaches it using bone shift. The foreign limb adjusts perfectly, closing cracks and washing some darkness from his damaged skeleton. Hardbone also appears on his panel, confirming that replaced limbs can transfer their skills. Countless victims have been transformed down here, meaning countless useful abilities surround him unnoticed. Ethan immediately forms a patient plan built around secrecy, murder growth, and eventual freedom. He will harvest isolated skeletons until he becomes strong enough to break Vargas's control. Blue flames brighten inside his sockets as he begins inspecting every wandering prisoner nearby. Suitable targets must remain low-level, carry valuable skills, and separate themselves from the crowd. Unfortunately, most skeletons exceed level 5, while fragile level 1 specimens are unusually rare. Eventually, appraisal reveals a level 3 skeleton possessing swift bone and unusually smooth white legs. Ethan follows those superior legs until their owner wanders away and falls deeply asleep. A single precise blow extinguishes its soul flame before it can alert anything nearby. He exchanges one cracked leg, activates bone shift, and feels warm energy spread upward. More damage disappears, his bones become cleaner, and his movements immediately gain noticeable speed. Hardbone has also increased his overall density, making even his ribs feel less brittle. While resting inside a hidden cave, Ethan notices that bone decay has slowed significantly. His remaining lifespan has expanded from 1 year to 1 year and 1 month. Greater constitution can delay his destruction, giving every stolen bone value beyond its skill. After sleeping, Ethan hunts a level 4 skeleton whose thick arm carries Power Strike. Defense and speed are already covered, so raw strength becomes his next necessary improvement. This victim survives the first rock strike, forcing Ethan to crush its skull twice. The kill raises him to level 2 and provides 1 freely assignable statistic point. He invests that point in strength before replacing his left arm with the superior limb. Testing the corpse teaches him another limitation: when removing the second arm weakens him instantly. Power Strike disappears whenever its associated limb leaves his body, then returns after reattachment. Ethan concludes that 4 borrowed skills can remain equipped with 1 attached to each limb. Permanent ownership may require evolving, while those selected bones remain connected to his skeleton. Until then, every replacement must be chosen carefully, because removing it also removes its power. Ethan establishes a quiet routine of hunting 2 isolated skeletons during each active period. Patience becomes his greatest weapon, since Vargas barely notices 10 missing servants among thousands. After 1 week, Ethan reaches level 3 and improves both strength and constitution to 5. His collection now includes Hardbone, Power Strike, Swift Bone, and the stealth skill Silent Step. Silent Step removes the noise from his movements, completely changing how efficiently he can hunt. Combined with Swift Bone, it lets him rush targets before they ever fall asleep. His simple rock becomes an execution weapon against creatures incapable of understanding an ambush. Then unfamiliar visitors descend over the canyon, interrupting Ethan's carefully controlled routine. They possess goat horns, scaled tails, black wings, and the unmistakable appearance of succubi. The demons inspect Vargas's skeletons like merchants evaluating livestock for purchase or experimentation. Ethan tries blending into the crowd, but his polished bones stand out among filthy remains. The cleanliness he maintained for personal pride suddenly becomes an extremely dangerous mistake. A level 34 high-rank demon named Lucia Vargas selects him as promising research material. Ethan instantly stiffens and imitates the vacant posture of every mindless skeleton surrounding him. Discovery of his intelligence would destroy any hope of escape and make him personally valuable. Lucia moves him with several others into a guarded plaza controlled by lower-ranked succubi servants. Constant observation removes his opportunity to crush skulls openly or gather experience through ordinary hunting. Instead, Ethan wanders near the guards and secretly listens while maintaining his empty performance. He learns that Lucia intends to create elemental skeletons capable of wielding rare elemental magic. Every captive is merely an expendable test subject whose destruction will provide useful experimental data. The first trial will involve fire magic and begins after only 3 days of preparation. Ethan cannot level safely, but he can still exchange limbs with sleeping skeletons unnoticed. He replaces offensive abilities with defensive and survival skills, suited specifically for intense flames. Most importantly, he equips fire resistance before Lucia returns to begin the experiment. 2 succubi restrain the first skeleton while Lucia places one hand against its skull. Molten fire pours across the captive, reducing its struggling frame into black ash almost immediately. A second subject collapses even faster, and more than 20 others soon follow. Only 3 skeletons survive the initial spell, yet Lucia does not allow them safety. She inserts strange crystals into their chest flames, turning blue light violently orange-red. Each survivor burns into charred fragments because Lucia only wants to measure their failure. Ethan finally realizes that every surrounding skeleton has already been taken while he watched. He attempts to drift toward another group, but 2 guards seize his shoulder blades. They drag him before Lucia, whose beauty cannot distract him from approaching torture and death. Her palm touches his skull, and fire magma coats every bone in molten flame. For the first time since becoming undead, Ethan experiences pain tearing through his entire body. His bones burn, crack, partially heal, and burn again beneath the sustained magical pressure. Fire resistance and hardbone barely preserve his structure until Lucia's spell finally ends. Steam rises from glowing red bones, surprising Lucia because such a weak skeleton survived. She responds by selecting a crystal larger than those used on the previous subjects. The increased dose confirms that success matters less to her than observing how Ethan breaks. When the crystal enters his chest, flame fire erupts through every joint and rib. His soul flames turn orange as fractures race across bones glowing like overheated pottery. Hardbone repairs damage continuously, but the destruction advances faster than his body can recover. Seconds before collapse, Ethan remembers the unused statistic point saved from his last level. Even inside the Inferno, his status panel remains visible and responds to his command. He places the point into Constitution, releasing restorative warmth throughout his burning skeletal frame. The spreading fractures stop as greater durability, and Hardbone begin matching the flames. His body repeatedly breaks and mends until the crystal's elemental violence gradually weakens. When the agony ends, Ethan's panel reveals both a new class and evolutionary possibility. Elementalist offers control over dangerous magic, while Fire Skeleton raises his level cap to 20. Lucia only sees the orange flames fade and assumes the attempted transformation ultimately failed. Disappointed, she kicks Ethan aside and continues without examining his hidden status carefully. Ethan resumes wandering mindlessly, concealing the faint orange flicker behind his restored blue flames. He alone survived the complete trial, and he secretly gained fire magic from Lucia. The demon believes she created another failure, but she has unknowingly armed her future enemy. Lucia soon leaves to gather materials and fills the plaza with another batch of skeletons. Ethan notices that she never counts them because every subject seems interchangeable and worthless. Her carelessness creates the perfect opening for hunting beneath the weaker guard's limited supervision. Among the newcomers, Appraisal identifies several level 5 targets and one level 6 skeleton. Ethan approaches the nearest victim and presses a palm directly against its vacant face. Blue fire blooms silently inside the skull, destroying its core before any guard notices. He crushes the chest flame, exchanges one leg, and discovers Silent Step remains on his panel. Surviving the experiment has permanently fused previously borrowed skills into his evolved magical structure. Ethan burns every remaining bone into powder and scatters the evidence across the ground. The process drains his spirit badly, proving that elemental magic consumes mental energy during use. He collapses into deep sleep, then continues spying on the succubi during daylight hours. Knowledge about Lucia's previous element saved him, so identifying the next trial becomes essential. The guards discuss earth magic, leading Ethan to search specifically for earth resistance. His ideal target is a rare level 6 skeleton carrying two separate skills simultaneously. Ethan delays taking its limb because his current setup remains necessary for nighttime experience farming. Another level would provide a reserve statistic point, the same emergency resource that saved him earlier. While burning evidence after one kill, he hears a succubus reporting within the shadows. She tells a black slime-like creature that Vargas has remained asleep for an unusual period. Unless circumstances change, her mysterious master intends to attack the bone dragon within 1 month. Hope surges through Ethan because a battle against Vargas could create enough chaos for escape. The shadow creature disappears, but the succubus notices Ethan lingering near their secret meeting. He immediately trips over, nothing falls forward, rises, and wanders in a random direction. His flawless imitation of a confused, low-rank skeleton convinces her that killing him is unnecessary. During the next nights, Ethan hunts aggressively while searching for the required resistance ability. A failed limb exchange extracts the wrong skill from one dual-skilled target and wastes energy. He must locate another suitable skeleton, leaving his spirit nearly empty before succeeding. Ethan burns the final corpse at low heat, so its destruction resembles natural bone decay. When the guards cleaned away those remains, they accept the disguise without any investigation. His spirit rises to 9, constitution reaches 7, and 1 free point remains available. Earth resistance is equipped, making Ethan confident enough to anticipate Lucia's next experiment eagerly. At noon, Lucia descends on dark wings and immediately orders 2 guards to seize him. She remembers her unusual survivor and studies the flames inside his sockets for suspicious awareness. Ethan fears his excitement has exposed him, but Lucia dismisses the impression and begins casting. A hurricane engulfs his body, slicing every bone with countless invisible blades of compressed wind. The promised Earth experiment was false, making every precaution Ethan prepared completely useless. Whether the guards lied or Lucia changed plans no longer matters inside the violent storm. Ethan flattens. His body protects his chest flame and continuously repairs the chips being carved away. He compresses his soul fire tightly, preventing the hurricane from tearing it out completely. Without wind resistance, his surface erodes into white powder swirling around the experimental plaza. When the spell stops, Lucia mistakes his ruined structure for another destroyed research subject. A tiny chest flame suddenly expands again, relighting Ethan's sockets and revealing his survival. Lucia calibrates a smaller pale blue crystal, intending to administer precisely enough power to kill him. Once inserted, the crystal releases a hurricane from inside his own skeletal frame. His teeth scatter, ribs snap, and his skull wears thin beneath relentless internal pressure. Ethan waits until the final possible moment before placing his reserve point into Constitution. Healing surges through his remains and contests the storm, while Lucia watches with widened eyes. She suspects an unusual regenerative talent, yet loses interest after confirming he will not collapse. Ethan receives no wind transformation because the crystal's smaller dose failed to trigger evolution. Every wound and lost tooth brought him nothing except a harsh lesson about incomplete preparation. Recognizing the elemental cycle, Ethan resolves to collect resistance against fire, water, earth, and wind. He will never again trust information overheard from guards whose plans may change without warning. After the second experiment, Ethan remains the only survivor and earns wary attention from the succubi. They regard him like an impossible pest that repeatedly endures every attempt at extermination. Fresh skeletons arrive, allowing him to resume secret hunting at 2 or 3 kills nightly. His efficiency creates so much airborne bone powder that flying guards begin noticing the irritation. Ethan nears level 6, but slows after hearing that the plaza appears emptier than before. Fortunately, nobody suspects a skeleton because they believe such intelligence and rebellion are impossible. Before Lucia returns, Ethan equips both water resistance and earth resistance to cover likely trials. She selects him first, again denying him any chance to observe another subject's experience. Lucia announces water smiles gently and immediately traps him inside a floating, crushing sphere. Pressure bends his bones inward, but water resistance and constitution, 9, limit the damage considerably. His endurance excites Lucia enough to make her choose an even larger deep blue crystal. She forces it into his chest, producing another wave of elemental agony and internal destruction. Ethan spends his final reserve point on Constitution and remains intact until the energy settles. This dose succeeds unlocking water magic and the evolutionary option called Ocean Skeleton. Lucia sees only another apparent failure, kicks him away, and continues destroying the remaining subjects. Ethan watches their deaths with unsettling amusement and realizes his emotions have changed profoundly. The terrified newcomer who once feared every sound now finds experimental slaughter strangely entertaining. Perhaps corruption has already replaced something human, although survival leaves little room for regret. The succubi soon treat Ethan as a lucky charm, rubbing against him and requesting fortune. Their constant attention makes nighttime hunting difficult and slows his growth before Lucia's return. Ethan reaches level 6 with Constitution 11, while strength remains badly neglected at only 5. The fourth trial finally uses Earth, and Lucia casts Decay against his vulnerable skeletal body. The spell turns bone into dirt, especially threatening someone already afflicted by natural bone decay. Yet Earth resistance and high constitution let Ethan withstand the initial attack without serious distress. Lucia follows with a crystal the size of a pigeon egg, dissolving him layer by layer. His awareness begins sinking as though the Earth itself is pulling him into permanent sleep. Ethan holds together without another statistic point, proving that his durability has become truly formidable. The successful transformation grants Earth magic and access to a sturdy Earth skeleton evolution. Ethan shakes away loose soil while silently appreciating Lucia's repeated investment in his growing power. She has unknowingly provided 3 elemental magics and strengthened the prisoner planning to escape her. Before releasing him, superstitious succubi remove several finger bones as supposed good luck souvenirs. Ethan returns among ordinary skeletons missing fingers, but carrying far more valuable hidden abilities. He begins selecting the strongest available limbs for the long-awaited conflict against Vargas. One rare right arm possesses sword bone, a skill found on only one skeleton nearby. Attaching it unlocks sword skeleton, an evolution that supports formal techniques and warrior development. Fewer than 20 days remain before the unknown faction launches its planned assault on Vargas. Ethan hunts cautiously, limiting each night to avoid creating a pattern the guards could recognize. Within 1 week, he reaches level 7, and his assassination method becomes brutally efficient. Bone shift, forms claws, earth magic, decays, spines, water extinguishes flames, and fire removes evidence. Every step has a purpose, leaving neither sound nor remains behind his carefully controlled executions. One night, Ethan kills a level 10 skeleton and immediately searches for another isolated target. He ambushes the next victim, destroys its core, and prepares to conceal the body underground. A small winged figure suddenly drops behind him before he can erase the evidence. Appraisal identifies Tris Lucia Vargas Hewitt, a level 14 shadow assassin serving the succubi. Tris recognizes Ethan from the secret meeting and realizes he possesses forbidden intelligence. Ethan also knows she reports to the mysterious force preparing an attack against Vargas. Each understands instantly that the other carries a secret too dangerous to leave alive. Ethan tears out one rib, reshapes it into a sharp sword, and attacks without hesitation. Tris summons black spikes from the ground, but Swiftbone carries him between them. Her spikes soften into binding shadows that curl around his limbs like tightening ropes. Ethan covers his bone blade with fire and slices through the dark restraints cleanly. The sight of elemental magic from a low-ranked skeleton shatters Tris's initial confidence. She abandons arrogance and flies upward, believing height will place her beyond his reach. Ethan converts his sword into a narrow spear and activates Power Strike through his arm. The flaming weapon tears through both bat wings, sending Tris spiraling toward the ground. Water and earth combine beneath her, transforming solid ground into a deep, sucking swamp. Mud fills her mouth before she can call the nearby guards for help. Ethan catches her throat, sharpens his fingers, and cuts until her struggling finally stops. Watching blood disappear into mud, he feels neither fear nor guilt about killing her. That absence troubles him briefly because Vargas may have destroyed more than his living body. Rising experience numbers quickly end the reflection and return his attention to practical survival. Ethan burns. Triss completely hardens the swamp, cleans his rib spear, and reattaches it. He resumes his empty wandering while reviewing the carelessness that allowed her to discover him. New power made him reckless, replacing the patience that previously kept every murder safely hidden. Triss's disappearance causes no alarm because one low-ranked demon means little to Vargas or Lucia. Even so, Ethan avoids hunting for 1 week while the promised invasion draws closer. When only days remain, he accepts calculated risks and resumes gathering experience discreetly. On the 3rd day, Ethan reaches level 10, the maximum permitted for his low-rank race. Strength reaches 10, Constitution 13, and Spirit 10 after weeks of dangerous adaptation. His permanent abilities now include stealth swordsmanship, elemental resistance, and 3 kinds of elemental magic. Multiple evolution routes appear while bone decay has extended from 1 year to 8. Ethan refuses to evolve because transforming inside the lair would expose his intelligence immediately. He will wait until battle distracts every guard and gives him one genuine opening. The following morning, the entire canyon shakes as rocks rain onto the skeleton army. Orange fireballs descend from the entrance, smashing prisoners and announcing the long-awaited invasion. Vargas rises from the deepest darkness and releases 7th Order magic as pure black destruction. A robed priest answers with golden judgment while an angelic shape forms behind the spell. A heavily armored warrior intercepts Vargas in midair and meets the dragon's charge directly. Human soldiers flood into the canyon as skeletons rush forward under their master's command. Vargas's enslavement urges Ethan to slaughter every human, but his strengthened will suppresses it. To remain convincing, he charges with the undead horde while secretly searching for an escape path. He begins stealing final blows from both sides, gathering experience while drifting toward freedom. Above him, dragons, priests, warriors, and succubi turn the canyon into a collapsing battlefield. Hidden among the chaos, Ethan advances toward the perimeter where Vargas's control may finally end. Human adventurers clash with the skeleton army, while Ethan steals every vulnerable kill within reach. When a wounded skeleton stumbles, he destroys its soul flame before the humans can finish it. When an undead servant threatens a soldier, Ethan shoves it aside and claims that victim himself. Each stolen victory feeds his experience bar, while he quietly approaches the battlefield's outer edge. Succubi rise toward the canyon rim and attack the mages, bombarding Vargas's forces from above. High-ranked skeleton mages animate fallen humans, forcing fresh corpses to attack their former companions. The invading priests reveal prepared countermeasures and begin chanting purification magic together. Golden light sweeps across the canyon, collapsing reanimated bodies and weakening ordinary skeletons. Ethan feels irritation under the holy radiance, but his improved constitution resists its effects. He deliberately stumbles with the others, preserving the illusion that he remains another obedient servant. Lucia's voice rises above the violence as the succubi answer with supporting magic. Purple energy washes through every soul flame and drives the skeleton army into a frenzy. A savage desire to tear humans apart erupts inside Ethan's chest with overwhelming force. He cools his soul fire using water magic and silently commands himself to remain hidden. Since the surrounding skeletons have become berserk, Ethan changes his strategy to targeting humans exclusively. Killing invaders prevents nearby undead from recognizing the traitor moving among their own ranks. He keeps fighting, stealing experience, and drifting closer to the perimeter whenever openings appear. Another priestly blessing coats human weapons in holy light, sharp enough to sever bones effortlessly. Skeletons collapse across the canyon as glowing blades slice through ribs, skulls, and limbs. Ethan endures the chaos and watches his stored experience climb beyond 2,000 points. Every point will flood into him after evolution, assuming he survives long enough to escape. The edge finally appears ahead, with open forest waiting beyond the devastated canyon. Ethan reaches toward freedom while imagining distant adventures and beautiful races beyond Vargas's control. Remembering his skeletal appearance makes that fantasy less romantic, but freedom still remains priceless. Before he can cross the boundary, Vargas crashes down beside him like a falling fortress. The impact launches Ethan backward through dust and bodies, returning him toward the battlefield's center. His escape route vanishes instantly, and frustration burns hotter than any spell Lucia used. The armored warrior swings a massive blade while the priest pins Vargas with golden power. Vargas answers with blue dragon fire, forcing the warrior's strike away from his skull. The blade severs one enormous horn instead, sending it spinning beyond the battlefield into the forest. Enraged Vargas breaks free and floods the canyon with indiscriminate breath attacks. Humans and skeletons burn together, while succubi scatter from their master's uncontrolled destruction. Every elite fighter turns toward the dragon, leaving low-rank servants completely ignored. Ethan recognizes a better opening than before and activates Silent Step without hesitation. Crouching low, he sprints through smoke and falling debris toward the perimeter once again. The scenery blurs around him until 5 human fighters notice the fleeing skeleton. 2 mages, 2 armored warriors, and 1 swordsman move casually to surround him. Their levels exceed his former limit, yet none considers a low-rank skeleton genuinely dangerous. The swordsman points his blade lazily, while the others barely prepare their weapons. Ethan removes a rib, shapes it into a sword, and raises his free hand. A combined mud projectile strikes the swordsman and both tanks directly across their eyes. Blinded, the armored warriors attempt to form a barrier while their companion retreats in confusion. Ethan turns the earth beneath them into swamp, trapping their heavy legs and sucking mud. He leaps through a gap and throws his flaming bone sword through the swordsman's throat. The 2 mages react quickly, collapsing the ground and launching a fireball toward him. Ethan drops with the broken earth, avoiding the projectile before surrounding himself with water. The explosion washes over his shield and causes almost no meaningful damage. His high constitution and elemental resistance have made ordinary first-order attacks disappointingly weak. Swift Bone carries him toward the mages before they can create proper distance. One swings a staff with respectable technique, forcing Ethan to form a narrow bone shield. The weapon rebounds after breaking only a few chips from his reinforced arm. Shock freezes the mage long enough for Ethan's opposite hand to tear open his throat. The final caster completes a spirit fire arrow and releases it as a red streak. The projectile pierces Ethan's shield and grazes his skull, leaving only superficial damage. Despair crosses the mage's face when her strongest spell fails to stop him. The tanks finally pull themselves free, but they emerge too late to protect her. Ethan grips the mage's neck, activates Power Strike, and crushes it beneath his fingers. Blood runs across white bones while blue flames burn steadily inside his hollow sockets. He forms another rib sword and turns toward the remaining armored warriors. Less than half a minute has passed, yet 3 of the 5 humans already lie dead. Their contempt prevented them from learning what kind of skeleton had entered their formation. Ethan combines blade work and elemental magic to cut both tanks down quickly. He recovers his first bone sword, restores both ribs, and searches the bodies for concealment. Leather armor and a cloak cover enough of his skeleton to hide its shape at distance. Ethan plunges into the forest and continues running without looking back toward the canyon. Freedom spreads through him with every step farther from Vargas's enslavement and Lucia's experiments. He presses his skull toward the forest air, unable to smell yet savoring the moment. A crater among the trees interrupts his escape because something enormous lies within overturned soil. At first it resembles white stone, but Ethan quickly recognizes Vargas's severed horn. His first instinct demands immediate retreat before the bone dragon comes searching for it. Then appraisal and greed inspire a far more dangerous possibility inside his mind. This horn belonged to a level 70 dragon and surpasses every limb Ethan has harvested. He presses his skull against it and activates Bone Shift to test compatibility. Bone begins fusing with bone, and his panel instantly reveals a rare evolution route. Half-Dragon Skeleton offers Dragon Power 3 new skills and a level cap of 30. Bone Wings. Bone Growth and Dragon Magic appear simultaneously as potential permanent abilities. Unfortunately, the horn is several times larger than Ethan's entire body and cannot be carried. Its density also prevents him from cutting away a manageable piece using ordinary methods. Inspiration arrives when Ethan considers evolving while remaining physically connected to the enormous horn. Perhaps transformation will absorb the material instead of forcing him to transport it manually. His panel displays several possible paths, but Elemental Skeleton immediately captures his attention. That evolution adapts to 4 elements, removes chanting requirements, and raises his cap to 20. Elemental magic has already saved his life repeatedly, making the choice almost effortless. Ethan confirms the evolution while his skull remains fused against Vargas's severed horn. 4 colored flames erupt from his chest and race across every borrowed section of bone. Different limbs merge seamlessly as variations in shade size and shape disappear. His entire skeleton becomes uniformly white, while the huge dragon horn begins shrinking impossibly. The material vanishes gradually into Ethan's body until nothing remains inside the crater. His previously unavailable class slot activates, and he chooses Elementalist without hesitation. Each future level will now grant 1 free point plus automatic constitution and spirit growth. Stored experience floods through him immediately and drives his level upward at extraordinary speed. Ethan settles at level 13 as an elemental skeleton with the Elementalist class. His strength reaches 11 Constitution, 15, and Spirit 13 before further manual investment. Bone Shift Appraisal and Elemental Magic improve, while several harvested skills remain permanently available. Bone Wings and Bone Growth also survive absorption, proving the Dragonhorn's power became his. Most importantly, the enslavement condition disappears entirely from Ethan's status panel. Vargas no longer owns his body, commands his instincts, or controls his future. The panel describes Ethan as cunning, versatile, deceptive, and lethal when underestimated. He cannot dispute that judgment because the description reflects his actual behavior accurately. His bones now resemble smooth white jade, and sapphire flames shine inside his chest. Ethan has little time for admiration because the battlefield remains dangerously close behind him. He climbs from the crater, places spare points into spirit, and begins sprinting away. More than 10 fleeing succubi suddenly appear ahead after abandoning Vargas's uncontrolled battle. Ethan immediately roughens and yellows his bones, recreating the appearance of a common low-rank skeleton. The disguise relaxes the demons initially, though one questions how Vargas's servant reached the forest. Skeletons should remain bound to the dragon's orders, making Ethan's presence increasingly suspicious. He shuffles among them with vacant movements and attempts to pass without confrontation. A precautionary fireball suddenly flies toward him, forcing Ethan to dodge instinctively. Every succubus freezes after witnessing a supposedly mindless skeleton evade a deliberate magical attack. Ethan abandons deception and releases a wind vortex that slams 2 demons into the ground. Swamp magic traps them, and fire finishes both before they can return to the air. The tallest succubus recognizes his intelligence and orders the entire group to attack together. Ethan throws mud across their vision, then dives between the trees to create distance. 2 messengers immediately turn back toward Lucia with news of her successful experiment. The remaining succubi chase from above, easily matching Ethan through the thick forest canopy. Running alone cannot escape flying pursuers, so he prepares to test an unproven skill. Bone grows from his shoulders, connects with spine and ribs, and forms jagged wings. Ethan has never flown before, but waiting for safety would guarantee his capture. He targets the lowest succubus, stops abruptly, and grows claws from fingers and toes. Sprinting vertically along a tree trunk, he launches from the crown directly toward her. The demon blasts wind at him, but Ethan spreads his wings and forces through it. His claws punch into her throat before either fighter can recover stable aerial balance. Other succubi surround them with fireballs, wind attacks, and waves of decay magic. Ethan uses the falling corpse as a platform and leaps toward the next group. Warrior types close with black claws, while mages maintain distance and bombard him continuously. He forms a flaming rib sword and reshapes one arm into a defensive shield. The demons cannot understand how an elementalist skeleton also possesses practiced warrior abilities. Wind magic adjusts Ethan's position mid-air and drives him toward the closest melee fighter. Her claws rebound from his shield because his bone density exceeds all expectations. Ethan pierces her neck, activates Power Strike, and throws the body into 2 pursuers. A fireball follows immediately and explodes across the succubi tangled by their fallen companion. He changes his sword into a spear and wraps the weapon inside a wind vortex. The projectile tears through one demon's arm before Ethan triggers bone growth remotely. Expanding bone crushes muscle from within and leaves the wounded succubus screaming in agony. A sudden chill warns Ethan before a black streak reaches his exposed neck. He raises his shield arm, which is severed completely by the tall succubus's dagger. She emerges from shadow and immediately aims her next strike toward his bone wings. Losing flight would leave Ethan trapped beneath the remaining airborne attackers and guaranteed defeat. Instead of dodging, he tackles the assassin and digs sharpened claws into her body. Ethan grabs his severed wing and drives its edge through one of her bat wings. They fall together while she struggles to throw him away before impact. The collision breaks Ethan's ribs and forces blood from the succubus's mouth. He takes one broken rib and drives it directly through her chest. Bone growth expands the fragment inside her body until it pierces the heart. Ethan's wing shatters during the fall, while several surviving succubi continue pursuing from above. They believe he has lost flight and bombard the forest as he runs beneath them. Ethan suddenly leaps into the sky again with a newly constructed pair of wings. He created them by removing both arms and one leg from his own body. The sight of an armless, one-legged skeleton flying toward them destroys the demon's confidence. Ethan attacks with his remaining leg, allowing the nearest succubus to predict and dodge. She strikes his spine, but he accepts the blow and crashes directly into her arms. Sharpened teeth close through her throat before she understands his true method of attack. Ethan uses her falling body as another springboard toward the terrified ranged fighters. Bone wings shield him from their spells while his single leg becomes a cutting blade. One mage loses her head and a burst of wind launches Ethan toward another. He bites through one wing and slices the fleeing demon's throat with a wing edge. Meanwhile, bone growth slowly restores the limbs Ethan sacrificed to remain airborne. Only 2 enemies remain, one mage and one warrior still bound by their master's orders. Ethan's white skeleton is covered in blood, making him resemble something risen from hell. He charges through the mage's firewall toward the warrior positioned in front of her. At the final moment, Ethan uses the warrior as a stepping stone and passes overhead. His restored bone edge opens the mage's throat before she can complete another spell. The last warrior attacks desperately, yet courage cannot reverse the outcome of the battle. Ethan kills her quickly and abandons every corpse because reinforcements may already be approaching. He spreads his wings and flies deeper into the forest without conserving any remaining magic. Capture means death or renewed experimentation, so exhaustion matters less than distance. Lucia arrives later with mid-rank succubi and examines the bodies scattered beneath the trees. Instead of anger, excitement fills her because the elemental skeleton truly survived and awakened intelligence. She orders her stronger servants to recover the runaway subject she now considers personal property. Ethan continues flying until his spirit empties and his wings can no longer support him. He falls among distant trees, yet paranoia refuses to let him rest openly. Months of imprisonment and repeated torture have taught him that visible safety means very little. Unable to continue, Ethan uses earth magic to bury his entire body underground. A hidden skeleton resembles an ordinary corpse, making the ground his best available shelter. He repeats that he is merely dead until exhaustion finally pulls him into sleep. Missing bones regenerate while he rests, confirming another important effect of successful evolution. Skills gained from borrowed limbs remain permanent even after those original bones are destroyed. Ethan awakens when loud voices and movement disturb the earth directly above him. Fear of Lucia's hunters freezes him until he realizes the speakers are human men. A trembling young woman named Della retreats from 3 attackers inside the forest. Their muscular leader carries a short sword, while 2 companions block her remaining escape routes. Della draws a dagger, but her smaller body only encourages the men's mocking confidence. Desperate, she places the blade against her own throat and threatens to deny them alive. The leader pretends to retreat, then lunges suddenly and tears the weapon from her hand. His companion sees both arms, leaving Della helpless before the approaching violence. Ethan begins climbing upward, and one white hand breaks through the disturbed soil. The men notice a newly risen skeleton, but their leader approaches without genuine concern. He assumes Ethan is mindless, low-ranked, and incapable of threatening experienced humans. A mud arrow erupts from the ground and strikes the leader directly across both eyes. Ethan reaches him before the sword can swing and crushes his neck instantly. The other men release Della and charge only to sink into sudden swamp beneath them. Ethan forms a rib sword and opens both throats within a few efficient movements. Their levels remain below 10, providing so little experience that he finds them disappointing. Della raises the recovered dagger while trembling at the skeleton who unexpectedly rescued her. Ethan understands her fear because intelligent undead rarely spare humans without a hidden reason. His first attempt at speech produces only grinding cracks from a throat without flesh. Bone Shift creates a thin plate capable of vibrating and shaping those sounds more clearly. Della tests his intelligence by asking for a single deliberate cracking response. Ethan answers correctly, and disbelief replaces part of the terror across her expression. She thanks the strange skeleton for saving her and slowly lowers the defensive dagger. Ethan practices speech while cleaning the bodies and adjusting the improvised structure in his throat. Water magic washes the dead men's clothing before he puts it over his bones. A cloak conceals his skull, allowing him to resemble a thin traveler from a distance. Once preparations finish, Ethan asks Della to discuss payment for preserving her life. Justice influenced his intervention, but practical necessity mattered much more to his decision. As undead, he remains a natural enemy of human civilization and requires trustworthy assistance. Experience with Lucia proved that beauty gives no reliable evidence of kindness or morality. Della identifies herself as a merchant and accepts the principle of fair exchange. Ethan offers two choices and allows her to determine which obligation she prefers. She can pay whatever value she places upon her life, then leave him forever. Alternatively, she can help him enter human society while accepting equal risk between them. One careless accusation could expose Ethan, so Della must provide insurance against possible betrayal. She selects cooperation immediately, surprising him with neither bargaining nor visible hesitation. Della explains that she needs protection and trusts this skeleton more than the humans nearby. She introduces herself fully as Della Reeves, a merchant traveling from White Bear City. Ethan gives his own name, then presses one finger carefully against her exposed neck. A thin bone necklace grows around it, too narrow to remove over her head. Betrayal would make the bone pierce her throat, placing Della's life under Ethan's control. She calls the restraint beautiful, despite fear remaining clearly visible beneath her composed smile. Ethan gives her one opportunity to reconsider, but Della confirms the agreement firmly. Together they begin traveling toward White Bear City, while Lucia's pursuit continues behind them. Hiding among humans offers Ethan better protection than remaining alone inside monster-controlled wilderness. During the journey, Della explains the political structure and geography surrounding their destination. White Bear City belongs to Mandel Duchy within the vast United Kingdom of Atlantis. 9 duchies compose the kingdom, and Count Witt governs the city they are approaching. Ethan passes through towering walls beside Della without attracting meaningful inspection from the guards. Clean, orderly streets resemble a magical version of medieval Europe more than he expected. At the city center, an enormous tower rises above rooftops and dominates the skyline. Ethan asks about it, accidentally revealing an ignorance no ordinary resident should possess. Della assumes becoming undead damaged his memories, providing him with a useful explanation. Ethan accepts that excuse immediately and lets her teach him basic knowledge about this world. Every major city possesses a tower marking the entrance to an underground dungeon. Those labyrinths contain monsters, magical resources, rare materials, and powerful equipment. Most magical goods supporting civilization originate from dungeons rather than ordinary surface trade. Job change scrolls, enchanted weapons, and valuable ingredients all emerge from those dangerous depths. Della explains that intelligent races once approached extinction before dungeons began appearing worldwide. Resources from those structures gave humanity and its allies enough strength to fight back. Over time, dungeon wealth allowed intelligent civilizations to dominate regions previously controlled by monsters. Ethan studies the tower with growing interest because it offers both power and anonymity. Entering human society has given him shelter, but the dungeon may provide his next path forward. Della explains that dungeon tiers correspond to depth, with each 10 floors marking a higher classification. White Bear City possesses a Tier 5 dungeon extending 46 confirmed floors beneath the central tower. Ethan recognizes the structure as an enormous grinding ground filled with resources, monsters, and advancement. Della brings him to her 4-story merchant guild, where adventurers trade materials gathered underground. Employees greet her as guildmaster, revealing far greater status than Ethan expected from their meeting. When he asks why she traveled alone, Della quietly admits that someone deliberately arranged her ambush. She provides thicker clothes and a heavy hood capable of hiding every visible piece of bone. A cat-eared maid delivers the outfit, immediately capturing more of Ethan's attention than he should allow. The disguise works perfectly, leaving only deep shadow beneath the hood, even in a mirror. Carrying money from Della, Ethan walks directly toward the tower to inspect his future training ground. Near its entrance, he encounters the Golden Priest and purple-armored warrior who fought Vargas. Their presence terrifies him because the warrior's sword severed the dragon horn now absorbed inside him. The priest, Keith, stops Ethan and wonders whether they have met somewhere before. Crushing pressure makes every joint creak, yet Ethan holds still and denies recognizing him. The warrior interrupts impatiently, revealing a commanding female voice beneath her heavy armor. Keith withdraws his hand, asks about the goddess of light, then finally allows Ethan to leave. Ethan escapes before purification magic can expose him as undead and reduce him to dust. Behind him, the warrior Iris repeatedly kicks Keith for teasing her about the mysterious cloaked man. Returning to Della's guild, Ethan hears an 8-member adventurer squad terminating its contract immediately. Della built the Hyena squad from nothing and relied upon them for difficult dungeon materials. Their departure threatens a huge order requiring resources found below the 20th dungeon floor. Failure would trigger penalties large enough to bankrupt the guild and strip Della of everything. No replacement party will accept the commission, suggesting someone has manipulated the entire situation. A wealthy noble enters openly and offers to erase the problem if Della becomes his mistress. Otherwise, he intends to bankrupt her, purchase her as a slave, and claim her anyway. Ethan initially avoids interfering because provoking nobility could destroy his new place of concealment. Then the man notices him mocks the supposed hired adventurer and predicts his dungeon death. That insult makes neutrality impossible because Della's collapse would also cost Ethan his human cover. He volunteers to gather the required materials before the deadline of half a month. Outside, Hyena squad leader Hugo confirms that his team will hunt Ethan inside the dungeon. Ethan answers that he truly is a skeleton, knowing honesty sounds more unbelievable than any lie. Della equips him with reinforced leather armor and her guild's most valuable magical staff. The weapon's pale blue stone amplifies spells, while its rare metal can survive tremendous physical force. Ethan enters the tower and follows illuminated corridors through nearly empty beginner floors. An underground river carries him rapidly to floor 8, where stronger monsters finally appear. A level 8 goblin charges and one power strike from the staff shatters its skull. Ethan deliberately wounds another goblin and follows it, hoping to discover the entire nest. Instead, the creature leads him in circles until dozens of green eyes surround him. Realizing he repeated Vargas's mistake by underestimating weaker enemies, Ethan immediately changes tactics. Swamp magic traps the goblins while amplified fireballs destroy them throughout the narrow cavern. The dungeon becomes a brutal training ground as Ethan descends and gathers experience continuously. He experiments with elemental combinations, improves combat efficiency, and studies every monster through appraisal. On the 15th floor, an overwhelming lizard-man king forces him into desperate retreat. Ethan flees through unfamiliar passages and falls into a hidden labyrinth beneath the normal dungeon. There he encounters the purple-armored warrior who has also become separated from Keith. Her light device breaks under her immense grip, so she hires Ethan as a portable guide. The payment is enormous, making refusal appear suspicious and financially irresponsible. She introduces herself as Iris Mantle and removes her helmet inside the dark maze. Purple hair, gemstone eyes, and flawless features reveal beauty as extraordinary as her strength. Ethan asks her to replace the helmet because looking at her makes his disguise harder to manage. Iris appears pleased but ignores the request, forcing Ethan to illuminate their path instead. She maps the labyrinth precisely and explains that they are searching for its hidden central core. During a rest, Ethan creates drinking water while pretending he simply lacks appetite. Iris eats enthusiastically, repairs her armor, and displays none of the refinement her appearance suggests. When exploration resumes, a bone-armored tiger attacks with speed Ethan cannot even perceive. Iris catches it by the neck and kills it with one effortless movement. She then carries Ethan through the labyrinth so quickly that darkness becomes a continuous blur. At the center stands a crystal palace guarded by creatures powerful enough to destroy him instantly. Ethan floods the structure with light while Iris shatters every golem between them and the throne. An enormous ice sword rests within that throne, still gripped by a severed skeletal arm. Iris reaches for the weapon, but the arm attacks until she slices it away. She grips the frost blade and begins pulling as freezing power spreads across her armor. Keith appears above them, revealing that he followed secretly and waited for Iris to weaken herself. The legendary sword suppresses its wielder's strength, allowing him to steal it after extraction. While they argue, Ethan approaches the severed arm and quietly replaces his own with it. Fusion unleashes strength so violent that every bone in his body begins cracking simultaneously. His throat breaks, his legs collapse, and one emergency constitution point barely prevents destruction. Ethan rises, trembling, places both hands over Iris's grip, and forces out one command. Together they pull, channeling the arm's overwhelming power into the resistant frost blade. Freezing wind covers Ethan completely, but Iris shields his body within her arms. The borrowed limb finally stabilizes permanently, increasing his strength and reinforcing his entire skeleton. Its familiar energy also weakens the sword's resistance until the blade slides free. Keith covers himself with layers of holy enhancements before attacking to claim the weapon. Iris meets him with the Frostblade despite being reduced to what she considers weakness. Her weakened state still matches the fully enhanced priest, leaving both Ethan and Keith stunned. Their battle destroys the Crystal Palace and fills the hidden sky with purple and golden streaks. Iris wins fairly and places the Frostblade at Keith's throat before ordering him away. She thanks Ethan and promises to grant any wish he chooses for helping her. Unable to decide, he receives her address and permission to claim the favor later. Iris carries him back towards safety, despite his protests, then departs for White Bear City. Ethan returns to the normal dungeon, kills the remaining lizard guards, and resumes descending. Deeper floors contain stronger enemies, harsher environments, and the fire crystals Della desperately needs. His growing abilities let him defeat monsters through traps, elemental combinations, and relentless endurance. By the time he reaches floor 21, Ethan has collected 8 exceptionally pure fire crystals. Hugo's hyena squad arrives below, still searching for the cloaked adventurer they promised to kill. Ethan follows them silently and waits until 2 members leave camp to smoke privately. One dies from a hidden slash, while the other becomes trapped before fire burns him internally. Ethan wears the dead warrior's armor and walks directly back into the unsuspecting camp. He kills a sleeping mage, captures an archer, and challenges Hugo's loyalty before everyone. Hugo answers by launching a fireball that kills his own restrained teammate. Ethan uses the death to fracture trust among survivors already exhausted by fear. He stalks their retreat attacks from darkness and offers safety to anyone delivering Hugo's head. Every accusation widens the distance between captain and companions until suspicion replaces discipline. When one rearguard attempts escape, Hugo attacks him and proves Ethan's manipulation correct. The remaining squad members begin fearing their leader almost as much as the hidden skeleton. Ethan ends the psychological game and attacks openly with Sword Staff Swamp and Defensive Earth. A swordsman drives steel through his empty chest cavity, expecting a heart that does not exist. Ethan catches him at close range and tears his throat before collapsing deceptively beside the body. Hugo sacrifices the squad priest as a shield and escapes deeper into the dungeon maze. Ethan follows his panicked muttering until one final whisper announces that escape has ended. Hugo dies alone and the hyena squad disappears without anyone witnessing Ethan's complete victory. Ethan delivers all 8 crystals to the underground supply contact responsible for transporting them. Their quality leaves her astonished because a single adventurer accomplished what a full squad abandoned. He climbs toward the surface over 2 days, gathering more experience along the route. Sunlight finally reaches his hidden face when he emerges from the city tower alive. Della's cat-eared maid runs to meet him after waiting anxiously for several days. Ethan learns her name is Lamentiel Reeves and rejects customs treating a slave's name as shameful. His sincere praise makes her ears twitch, while his hand repeatedly finds excuses to pat them. Lamentiel nearly panics when Ethan casually tosses her the package containing priceless crystals. Back at the guild, news of his solo achievement spreads through the entire crowded hall. Adventurers stare at the mysterious man who reached floor 21 and fulfilled an impossible commission. Della receives the materials with exhausted relief, knowing the guild will survive the engineered crisis. Ethan's victory destroys the nobleman's plan, but humiliation soon drives him toward direct retaliation. Armed men attack the guild only to encounter Ethan's magic and resistance inside the building. The conflict escalates until Count Witt's authority and Iris's sudden intervention expose the conspiracy completely. Iris arrives with overwhelming force, crushes the attackers, and protects everyone targeted by the nobleman. Compensation from the Count repairs the guild while the defeated conspirators lose their influence. Della's business survives. Lamentiel remains safe, and Ethan strengthens his position within the city. The next morning, Iris appears at his door, demanding the wish he still has not chosen. When Ethan gives no answer, she offers sword training as interest on the unpaid debt. His technique comes from absorbed skeleton skills rather than true practice, making her criticism accurate. Ethan equips armor before training because Iris could shatter his bones accidentally within minutes. She attacks faster than perception, kicks him across the yard, and punishes every narrow focus. Watching only her sword earns him strikes from fists, feet, shoulders, and impossible angles. Iris corrects his thrusting posture while repeatedly throwing him across the training ground. One brief distraction toward her exposed waist costs Ethan his weapon and another crushing defeat. By the session's end, his bones feel ruined while Iris appears merely warmed up. She praises his unusual combination of elemental magic and swordsmanship but warns that path grows difficult. Elementalist levels favor spirit and constitution, leaving Ethan dependent on powerful bones for strength. Iris offers to buy food afterward, but he refuses because eating publicly is impossible. She promises to return the next morning, and her smile makes disagreement feel physically dangerous. Ethan visits Della for better magical knowledge, but her books cannot support serious advancement. She directs him toward White Bear City's guarded public library instead. Ethan borrows texts on elemental magic circles and explosive magic for 5-day study periods. At home, he removes the heavy disguise and reads comfortably in simple clothes with bones exposed. He studies until darkness activates magical lamps and continues until exhaustion finally forces sleep. Every morning, Iris arrives and beats improved sword habits into him through merciless repetition. Every afternoon and night, Ethan devours magical theory and tests new applications privately. Under Iris's instruction, his crude inherited technique becomes faster, cleaner, and more deliberate. One day he combines improved magic with swordsmanship strongly enough to make her perspire. Iris adapts by the following morning and resumes controlling every exchange without difficulty. Explosive magic fascinates Ethan because it resembles principles he remembers from his previous world. He creates a first-order explosion spell by reproducing gunpowder-like force through a magic circle. Bone Shift transforms one arm into a tube containing a pointed projectile and explosive chamber. Detonation fires the bone bullet, although poor accuracy immediately demands further experimentation. Ethan carves rifling into the barrel and adds wind magic to stabilize the projectile. He improves Seal's chamber length and rotation before constructing a rapid-firing mechanism. Multiple barrels complete the design, leaving him with a functional bone Gatling gun. Intensive study raises appraisal to level 3 and changes how Ethan perceives magical flow. Knowledge collected from every text suddenly connects and settles permanently within his soul. His memory sharpens dramatically, accompanied by a fierce hunger for further information. Ethan rereads entire books overnight and still feels unsatisfied when dawn arrives. Despite only 2 hours before training, he refuses to use exhaustion as an excuse. Iris beats him throughout the morning while correcting weaknesses created by sleeplessness. His days settle into a punishing rhythm of combat practice, library visits, and midnight study. Appraisal's advancement requires constant learning, so Ethan fears the skill may weaken without nourishment. Near photographic memory lets him absorb books quickly, but obsession steadily damages his rest. Iris notices the worsening fatigue and responds by kicking even harder during training. Ethan forces himself to sleep only when his body can no longer maintain concentration. Then one morning, Iris remains after practice instead of leaving at the usual time. She announces that she will depart White Bear City that afternoon to continue traveling. The news creates a strange emptiness inside Ethan's chest, despite its complete lack of organs. He invites her inside and prepares expensive red tea purchased specifically for her visits. Iris explains that a warrior's blade dulls without battles against real monsters and dungeons. Her journey will continue north toward increasingly dangerous regions and stronger opponents. Before leaving, she finally reveals the wish driving every step of that difficult path. Iris intends to become a sword saint, the legendary pinnacle available to warriors. Ethan respects the dream immediately, refusing to mock someone brave enough to pursue it. Encouraged, Iris asks what ambition guides him beyond simple survival and concealment. After serious thought, Ethan declares that he will become a sage, the greatest title for mages. Iris laughs from genuine happiness and formally addresses him as the future sage. Ethan bows in return and names her the future sword saint. She gives him a sapphire earring identical to the enchanted stud on her right ear. Water Spirit's yearning grants underwater breathing, strengthens water spells, and blocks lower-order water magic. Ethan notices she pierced her own ear with the matching artifact without hesitation. Iris describes a northern route through dungeons ending at Mandel Ducci's Tier 9 labyrinth. She promises to wait there, turning their separate journeys toward one eventual meeting place. Before departing, Iris requests to see Ethan's face so she can recognize him later. She also asks for a farewell embrace, though her intentions quickly become less innocent. Ethan warns that his appearance may frighten her, but Iris refuses to accept avoidance. She corners him and announces that she also wants a farewell kiss. Ethan argues that friends do not normally kiss, only for Iris to admit she likes him. Her feelings began when he helped claim the Frost Blade and deepened during their training. Ethan insists affection should develop gradually, but Iris leaves that very afternoon. She decides to borrow the kiss from their future, rather than wait for another meeting. Ethan attempts escape, yet Iris catches both shoulders and pins his wrists against the wall. Her strength holds him more completely than chains preventing even one bone from moving. Purple eyes lock onto the darkness under his hood as her face draws steadily closer. Her cheeks' red and purple hair brushes his cloak and one hand reaches upward. Ethan realizes that continuing the disguise would betray the trust she has shown repeatedly. Iris protected him from Keith, trained him without payment, and shared her greatest ambition. Even learning his nature would not make her a practical threat after everything between them. Ethan asks her to stop and explains that he is not human. Iris mistakes the confession for rejection and believes he invented an excuse to avoid her. Her trembling hands tighten until Ethan's shoulders begin creaking beneath the emotional pressure. He quickly admits that he genuinely likes her, preventing both heartbreak and structural damage. Iris demands confirmation and Ethan repeats the answer without hesitation. Relief softens her expression and slightly reduces the crushing force around his arms. Ethan still insists that his warning is literal rather than fear metaphor or self-hatred. Beneath the cloak stands an undead creature hunted by church's demons and ordinary humans alike, revealing that truth could destroy the peaceful life he has only recently begun constructing. Yet allowing Iris to leave while deceived would make every moment of trust fundamentally unequal. Ethan remembers hiding intelligence from Lucia, identity from Della, and his face from an entire city. Those lies preserved survival, but this secret now carries a different emotional cost. Iris remains close enough for her breath to stir the fabric covering his skull. Her hands do not release him even after hearing that something non-human waits beneath the hood. Ethan studies her eyes for fierce suspicion or the first sign of violent rejection. He finds confusion and wounded pride, but no immediate impulse to attack. The bone necklace around Della once created trust through mutual danger and enforced consequence. With Iris, Ethan possesses no such protection, making this reveal an act of genuine vulnerability. His fingers slowly rise despite the pressure still holding his body against the wall. The heavy cloth feels far more dangerous than any dungeon gate or battlefield he has crossed. Behind it lies smooth white bone sapphire soul flames and the identity known only to a few. Iris watches every movement without retreating, her determination remaining stronger than uncertainty. Ethan accepts that her reaction cannot be controlled through magic, strategy, disguise, or force. Whatever happens next will depend entirely upon whether Iris can accept the truth before her. He loosens the fabric around his neck and begins drawing the hood away from darkness. Sapphire light touches Iris's face as the hidden flames inside his sockets become visible. Ethan finally abandons the protection of his human disguise before the woman he trusts. With Iris still holding him against the wall, Ethan slowly lifts his hood and reveals his true face.